What's going on, everybody? This is RJ from Game News USA, back today with another top 10. And I want to go decade by decade because I really have a long history of enjoying games from these decades. Now, granted, I decided not to do the 1970s. I'm not as familiar with that decade as far as gaming goes. To be completely honest, I don't really feel like there's much of a need to make a video about the 70s for gaming. That being said, I do want to honorably mention some good games from the 70s, because without the 70s, without the Atari 2600, we would have never gotten to the point we've gotten to now. You know, games like Space Invaders and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So, big credit to the 70s for laying the foundation. But we're going to move right into my top 10 games from the 1980s. Now, full disclosure, I didn't play these games in the 1980s. I probably played them in the 90s or later. But these are my favorite games from the 1980s. And I want to say that most of them spawned franchises we love today. So, if you like this kind of video, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get right into it. Number 10 on the list is Donkey Kong. So, before Mario was Mario, he was Jumpman, and you'd have to climb up and get to the top to win the level. Before there was Princess Peach, you were rescuing Princess Pauline. Before Bowser was even a thing, Donkey Kong was the villain, actually. And this game now is approaching 45 years old soon, in the next couple years. Believe it or not. It is an arcade staple. I also have a video on the channel about top 10 arcade games that's definitely on there, if not near the top. But Donkey Kong is still fun to play to this day. It's super short. It's like 3 or 4 levels. You beat it, it's done. But not really, because back in the day, you keep going because you want to rack up that high score. That's how games were back then. But it deserves to be on this list at number 10. Number 9, Castlevania. Keep in mind, we are using North American release dates. For this list, I decided to go with the original Castlevania. It spawned a franchise that I love dearly and would love to see more content from. Konami, I'm looking at you. But yeah, Castlevania, really unique, really original. Definitely a big part of gaming history. Number 8 on the list, Galaga. Super fun arcade game. You know, I like it more than I like Donkey Kong. That's why it's higher on the list, obviously. It's really challenging. It's a blast to play. Of all these, you know, kind of space shooter type games, this is the best one out of all of them. Even to this day, nothing gets me quite like Galaga in that sort of genre. That's why it's got to be number 8 on the list. It also holds up extremely well. It's actually, even though it's in dark, deep space, it's very colorful and vibrant and fun for a game that came out nearly 45 years ago. Next up, number 7, Tetris. It came in the late 80s, man. Game Boy, you know, handheld gaming. It revolutionized handheld gaming. Tetris was the fun pick-up-to-play game, and absolutely deserves a spot on this list, not just for the game it is, but for the legacy it left behind and the franchise it spawned. Some people might even think I have it too low, but that's where I have it, at 7. Number 6 on the list, Mega Man 2. The rare time I'm going with a sequel here, because Mega Man 2 just took all the foundation that Mega Man 1 left and just made it better. And so Mega Man 2, a late 80s NES game, the best Mega Man game ever, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's number 6 on the list. Number 5, and this will probably be on nobody's top 5 games for the 1980s, but it's in mine, and that's the list we're doing right now. Kid Icarus. Loved Kid Icarus. You know, I did like Kid Icarus Uprising. They brought it to 3DS. That is my favorite game of the series. I want more Kid Icarus. Don't just remake that game. Give me new Kid Icarus. More Kid Icarus. Kid Icarus is so underrated from the 80s. It's so good, man. It's just one of the best NES games out there. And it's difficult. It's fun. I love it. It's especially pretty handy on NSO with save states. You know, like a lot of the older games are. Just for the simple fact of being able to save more often. But, tremendous game. Gotta give it a top 5 on this list for sure. Number 4, Metroid. The original Metroid. First of all, this is one of the Nintendo staple franchises. I'm super excited for Metroid Prime 4. Some gamers, like Josie Woe, they don't like Metroid at all. They think that the original is very archaic, and they're entitled to their opinion. However, I can tell you that despite the difficulty, this game is really fun. Like, yes, there's better Metroid games in the series, for sure, no doubt, but this laid the foundation, the building blocks for what was to come. Metroid is one of a kind when it came out in its time, for sure. It's number 4 on the list. Number 3, Pac-Man. I almost debated putting this higher, but it's kind of hard to with the top 2 on my list. But Pac-Man, in my opinion, the greatest arcade game ever. You could still play it these days. It's 44 years old at this point. Came out in 1980. A game right at the beginning of this decade. Or the beginning of the 80s, right? If Pac-Man still existed in actual arcade cabinets nationwide, I would still be plunging quarters in. Despite the fact I own Pac-Man on God knows how many systems. It's so fun and addictive just to see how high you could run up the score, how long you could survive. It's such a simple concept, but it's executed so brilliantly, beautifully, wonderfully. Pac-Man is definitely a top 3 1980s game. And that brings me to number 2 on the list, The Legend of Zelda. Now, you know, much like Metroid, there are better games that come after it. But it laid the foundation and the groundwork, which is the theme of the 1980s decade, in my opinion. And The Legend of Zelda was a game that was one of a kind. It was an open world for the time. A game that had so much exploration options, and it had some great boss fights and puzzles and dungeons, and spawned a franchise that is beloved to this day. So Zelda has to be number 2. And number 1 on this list, come on, you know it, you love it. Again, this is North American release dates, so I can't do Super Mario Bros. 3, or else I would. Number 1 on this list is Super Mario Bros. And that's what you hear in the background is the underground theme from Super Mario Bros. Look, this saved the gaming industry. In the mid-80s, in the United States, the gaming industry was dead. Atari ran it into the ground with poor quality games and overpriced, saturated content. But Nintendo swooped in and saved the gaming industry on the back of Mario and Super Mario Bros. Almost every gamer, one of their first games is Super Mario Bros. For a reason. Almost inventing the platform genre. The idea of moving left to right with a goal at the end. It sounds so rudimentary and simple now and cliche now. Back then, you gotta think, these people are inventing this shit out of thin air. Out of their ass. Through their intelligence, Shigeru Miyamoto developed a game where you're running through an obstacle course with all these unique enemies and with this goal at the end. And it's definitely evolved over the years. But to come up with this original concept, what kind of shrooms would you have to do to even do that? To even think of this in your brain. To spawn this game. The colors, the enemies, the level design, the secret paths, the music, of course. all top-notch for its era and its time. And the game holds up so well, even compared to the other games I have on the list. Literally anybody could pick up and play Super Mario Bros. And you didn't need a fucking tutorial. You start moving from left to right, and you realize, oh, this enemy killed me. I need to jump over him. So simple. 2 controls. Move, dash, and jump. Perfect for the NES controller. I love Super Mario Bros. It's the most important game ever in our industry. And it's gotta be number 1 on the top 10 games of the 1980s. So with that being said, guys, did you like the video? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Are there any games from the 1980s that you love? Thank you all for watching. Peace. Have a good one.